Hey moneymakers, welcome to Taking Stock Live. I'm Kalila and it's my pleasure to be here with you yet another week. So much to talk about. So last week was the Jamaica Stock Exchange's annual regional conference, and this is an event that really sets the tone for the investing year ahead. We're going to be looking back at some of the highlights from the conference, and then later on in the show, we're going to have a friend to the show, kind of a stranger. We haven't seen him in a minute, but guess what? Randy Rowe from MyMoneyJA.com is going to be on talking about winners and losers of 2025, as well as the look ahead for 2026. But first, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and subscribe to the newsletter at moneymediaja.com or getmoneynews.com. Also, let us know in the chat what part of Jamaica or what part of the world you're joining us from. Now, come on, let's get this money.
Here's What's Hot, brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart.
Wooden pallet manufacturer Woodcats is aiming to be the first company to list on the Jamaica Stock Exchange in 2026. The 26-year-old company is offering 833 million shares to the public, each priced at 90 cents. The minimum subscription is 1,000 shares. If the offer is successful, they will list on the junior market of the Jamaica Stock Exchange. In addition to wooden pallets, Woodcats also manufactures garden mulch, planter boxes, outdoor furniture, and engineered wood items. The company was acquired by Derrimon Trading in 2018. They intend to use the funds to purchase equipment and for working capital. The offer opens on February 2 and is expected to close on February 20. NCB Capital Markets is the lead broker. Michael Lee Chin has reportedly made the initial payment of $94 million owed to bondholders. According to the Gleaner, the Jamaica Central Securities Depository Trustee Services, which represents the bondholders, said it received the payment from AIC Barbados in full last week. The payment was originally due December 31. It's part of a repayment plan arranged by a bond committee. This is intended to help three of Lee Chin's companies repay more than $364 million to bondholders. The criminal cases against three former SSL executives have been transferred to the Supreme Court. SSL founder Hugh Croskrey, his daughter Sarah Meany, and former SSL CEO Zachary Harding have each been slapped with multiple breaches of the Larceny Act, the Companies Act, the Securities Act, and the Banking Services Act. The cases were previously being tried in parish court. SSL collapsed in 2023 after a $4 billion fraud was uncovered. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened 100% tariffs on Canada if the country deepens ties with China. Canada and China recently made a trade agreement that would lower levies on Canadian canola oil from 85% to 15% by March. In return, Canada will tax a limited number of Chinese electric vehicles at 6%, down from 100%.
What's Hot was brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart. What's Hot was brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart.
Guess what? You don't need to be rich in order to start investing. As a matter of fact, investing is how you get rich. You can start with as little as 1,000 Jamaican dollars at some firms, like this security guard that I met a few months ago. That's how much you started with?
1,000.
1,000.
Yeah. That's a good thing to do it still, to learn more.
And you happy with it so far?
Yes.
Check out my Investing for Beginners course. Go to investingforbeginnersja.com to get started. Let's get this money.
Are you interested in buying land or property? Here are the steps you should follow. Step 1. Find out who is legally authorized to sell the property. Step 2. Ensure all property tax payments are up to date. Step 3. Consult an attorney at law who will guide you through the process and protect your interests. You can also use eLand Jamaica to check on matters pertaining to your property purchase. For more information, contact the National Land Agency at 876-750-5263 or 876-946-5263. Email asknla@nla.gov.jm or message us on WhatsApp at 876-418-5089. The National Land Agency. One agency, one goal to serve you better.
Welcome back. Let me see who's joining us. We've got Dwight from Spanish Town. Garfield is also in Spanish Town. Techie Investor is in St. James. We got Denval in Nassau, Bahamas. D. Duncan is in the Bronx representing the BX. Antoinette saying good night to the dinero makers. We have Paisum in Goshen, St. Elizabeth. Oren saying hello from the Republic of Ochi. Hope you have your Ochi passport. He says, TJH Army, we're turning into Big Mish. Hail to the Army. We have Eon saying good night from Toronto and Ricardo joining us from Portmore. So big up to all our viewers at home and abroad. And reminding you that if you are abroad, you can also send money back home using TapTapSend. With TapTapSend, you pay no fees when you are sending a money transfer back home. So if you're living in the US, the UK, or Canada, send money back home using TapTapSend. You may still have family and friends who are recovering from Hurricane Melissa. This is your way to give back to family and friends and also to help to build Jamaica. Use TapTapSend and use the code Kalila10 for an extra $10 on your very first money transfer. So you send $100, your friends and family get $110 because there are no fees with TapTapSend, especially for those of you abroad. Now, like I said at the top of the show, last week was the JSE conference, and it is an event that tends to shape the investing year ahead. It gives your outlook, and we review what has happened in the past year. A major theme in this year's conference was Hurricane Melissa, of course, and there also was a look at what has been happening on the international markets, what is happening with US Venezuela tensions, which definitely affects our entire region. So if you've been following me on social media, you would have seen some of the recap videos that I've posted so far. There are some more to come throughout this week because a lot of things were said during the entire three-day conference. But let's start with Prime Minister Andrew Holness. During his speech, he made it clear that changes are coming to the regulations for Jamaica's financial sector. But what kind of changes?
That success. The architecture that once focused primarily on risk containment must now be recalibrated to enable opportunity. The same framework that shielded Jamaica in a period of vulnerability must now be adapted to support expansion, innovation, and scale in a period of strength. This is not a repudiation of what has worked. It is the next logical step in Jamaica's economic evolution. Today, Jamaica operates in a vastly different macroeconomic environment with significantly lower public debt, robust external reserves, credible and durable fiscal anchors, and deeper, more sophisticated domestic capital markets. The risks we face today are different. The instruments available to us are more complex, and the opportunities before us are far greater. It is therefore time, deliberately, responsibly, and transparently, to revisit and modernize elements of the financial regulatory framework, not to weaken stability, but to ensure that regulation is aligned with evolving risk profiles, increased market sophistication, innovation in financial products and instruments, and the imperative for capital markets to play a more dynamic role in fueling economic resurgence and resilience. This is not deregulation, Let me say that again. This is not deregulation, but smarter regulation.
So interesting, because he alluded to a revamping of the regulations and updating of the regulations, but he didn't really hint at what way. So are the regulations going to be tighter, or are they going to be more relaxed? Because the way that he set up that comment was to say that these regulations were crafted during a time that Jamaica was very, very different. We were coming out of the FinSAC era of the 1990s, when there needed to be very tight regulations. But here we are 30 years later, and things have changed. But I do wonder to what extent we need to be changing or loosening potentially those regulations in a post-SSL era. And we do wonder, what is it going to take to restore investor confidence? Because 3 years post-SSL now, and investor confidence still hasn't fully recovered. I still get comments on almost every video about Usain Bolt get back in money yet? And it's a fair question. And so that comment really struck me in particular, and we're wondering, okay, what direction is the government going to take? And he did say that during the budget debate coming in March, we're going to be hearing more about that. So we're marking that down as one to watch. Now, what else did the Prime Minister say? He has announced that the government will be establishing the National Reconstruction Authority, NARA.
Is a critical part. So we have decided that we're going to establish the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, an institution mandated to coordinate post-disaster reconstruction and long-term resilience building. This will be a center of excellence, a single point of coordination, a platform for public-private partnerships, which we will be reaching out to the private sector in a deliberate way to see how we can partner to get the projects that you had in mind for the area, new projects, financed and executed. And it will be a bridge between climate resilience and economic development.
And you know, later on, Senator Auburn Hill, who is the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, pointed out that of the money that Jamaica is getting for reconstruction, so remember we have 6.7 billion with a B, US dollars in loans and grants going towards reconstruction efforts, among other things, recovery efforts in general, I should say. Of that amount, 2.4 billion is earmarked for private sector investment. And he basically said, private sector, come get no money. So another thing to watch, a lot of money is about to be pumped into Jamaica's economy, equal to about half of this country's GDP. So there is money that's going to be going around. Obviously, we have to watch out for corruption, but we also have to be aware of the opportunities. And as savvy investors, this is something that you need to watch. Who are the players that are going to be taking advantage of this? And if you are in business yourself, how can you potentially get a piece of this pie? So moving on to some other points, I think this is the last point from the PM. Yes, he touched on Jamaica's crime rate.
No discussion on economic confidence and investment would be complete without addressing public safety. Here too, in Jamaica, we have made extraordinary progress on this. In 2025, Jamaica recorded 42% reduction in homicides compared to 2024. Yes. Let me be clear, this is not a fluke. In 2023, we had an 8% reduction. In 2024, we had a 19% reduction. And in 2025, we have had a 42% reduction. As of today, we are 50% below last year this time.
You know, it truly is remarkable what the government, the private sector, civil society, everybody together, the police, have been able to achieve in reducing Jamaica's crime rate so dramatically. Crime is one of the #1 hindrances to Jamaica's growth. When you think about the amount of money that is spent on security in this country. As a business owner, you have to worry about transporting money, the safety of your employees, your business place not being broken into, all the costs that go into that, not to mention those who live in certain vulnerable communities who have to factor in extortion cost as a part of the cost of doing business. And so when you see those crime numbers coming down so dramatically, what we can expect to see is an increase in this country's earning potential, because less is going to be spent potentially on security, less is going to be needed to be spent on security. When you hear the Prime Minister saying things like, the next step is to move towards becoming a country of peace, that is something very, very encouraging. And I think it needs to be studied to know how we have achieved these levels of crime reduction. I know the police commissioner has given like 10 or 11 points as to how they accomplished it. But yes, there are external factors as well. There are other factors to consider. For example, the number of police killings. I just asked ChatGPT last night, how many police killings have there been per year from the year 2000 to current? And I have noticed a dramatic increase, particularly in 2025. So is it that police just killing off all the bad men them? What is the strategy? Will the strategy continue to work? But for now, we definitely are grateful that those numbers are coming down, and they're coming down consistently, because it came down in 2025, in 2024, in 2023, and so far we're also down in 2026. Now, another speaker at this event was the CEO of NCB Capital Markets, Angus Young, whom the Prime Minister dubbed Professor Angus Young, because Angus was dropping those gems left, right, and center, even from opening night, delivering what can only be described as a treatise on Caribbean-US relations, geopolitics, everything that is going on and how it is likely to affect us. And on Thursday morning, he was part of the CEO's Meet the Press, and this is what he had to say.
This morning, what I'd like to do is share with you a little bit about the future of the broker-dealer here in Jamaica and the region, what that's going to look like. It's going to look a lot different than what it looks like today, and the importance of large, strong, indigenous financial institutions to Jamaica and to our region. So first up, the future of broker dealing. On, I think it was Tuesday night, we spoke about the regulatory environment and its evolution. We spoke about the adoption of Basel III going forward, the capital adequacy requirements that come along with that, the liquidity requirements that come along with that. We spoke about Twin Peaks regulation, what that would look like, what that would cost, and of course, this special resolution regime, which again is also something that the industry would bear the cost of in more ways than one. Now, this is going to influence what the future broker-dealer looks like, because these regulations are going to make the balance sheet of the future be more scientifically crafted. When you adopt capital adequacy, liquidity requirements, and this becomes part of your regulation, of your laws, the construct of the balance sheet going forward is going to be more disciplined. The pricing of assets, the pricing of liabilities, focuses on return on capital, return on risk-rated capital, etc., are going to change things a little bit. Pricing will become more organized, more disciplined, and that's what's going to influence the future balance sheet. Now, that in itself is going to make things a little more challenging, because the amount of regulation that is coming on board with Twin Peaks, special resolution regime, etc., the cost of this regulation is going to be borne by the broker-dealer. So imagine a scenario where the future broker-dealer has these Basel III, Twin Peaks, these things to abide by, has to build the talent and the intellectual capital to abide by it, has to be more disciplined with pricing, balance sheets, construct, and then of course pay for the regulation. essentially what it does, it creates a safer environment, and that's great, but it creates a higher return hurdle for the broker-dealer.
That's Angus Young, CEO of NCB Capital Markets, speaking about some of the changes that he thinks are coming to Jamaica's investing landscape. Hopefully next time we are able to take some of Angus's opening night presentation, because that was truly exceptional. Hopefully next week we get a chance to play some clips from that. We also heard from CEO of Grace Kennedy, Frank James, their brand new CEO, and how GK is positioning itself for 2026.
We at Grace Kennedy to continue to drive our global growth ambitions. And one thing that these unprecedented events has made clear and reinforced for us is the importance of diversification, because these events can hit one country today and hit another country tomorrow. Key to that is investing in a most robust, optimized supply chain. And we're actively doing that to ensure that we have the most robust supply chain in the region. Another key area of focus is our digital strategy, which enables agile market access. So recently, we entered Guyana with our GK1 app. And in very short order, we're going to be entering Trinidad and Cayman. Now, previously, we couldn't enter markets like that back to back. It would have taken us significantly more time. But because of digital, we can be agile in the way we enter new markets. Digital also builds our resilience. So, for example, when physical locations were closed due to Melissa, our customers were able to continue sending remittances, and we saw a spike in digital remittances.
So that's CEO of Grace Kennedy, Frank James, talking about how they are entering new markets and how digital makes it easier for them to enter new markets. Also on that stage was CEO of Phosphor, Cecil Farr, and I think tomorrow we're going to play the highlights from his clip on social media, on Instagram and TikTok. But they announced that they've been on a listening tour. He announced what all they're doing, and also that they have incorporated a solar energy company, specifically because the demand for solar energy post-Hurricane Melissa has been so high. And so that's going to be their next move. So we'll hear about that probably tomorrow over on social media. So those were excerpts from the CEO's Meet the Press, one of my favorite events at the JSE conference. They have that every single year, and I always look forward to hearing what the CEOs are saying. Let me take some of your comments before we move on to our poll question for tonight. Oren says, I'm extremely optimistic. Philberg says, encourage more foreign direct investment. Ryan says the reduction in crime will definitely boost investor confidence. That's another major thing. So confidence in the economy, confidence in business, those are other repercussions, positive repercussions of a reduction in crime, and such a dramatic reduction in crime at that. It makes you feel like your money is safer when you can invest in a country that is safe in general. Oren says, the conference was excellent. I think the outlook for Jamaica, though she was ravaged by the hurricane, is good. We are going to bounce back soon. And then we have Philberg saying, free up the capital, yes, bro God, and sell Caymanas to SVL. All right, now it's time for our poll question of the evening, and it has to do with Woodcats International. By the way, if you're wondering how come we're not talking to Woodcats tonight, we are actually going to be doing a special feature with them tomorrow night. So tune in to this platform, same time tomorrow, 8 o'clock. We're going to be having on Woodcats International to talk about their IPO. But for those of you who have already reviewed the prospectus, I know you guys waste no time. This dropped on Monday evening. Will you be investing in Woodcats International IPO? Yes, I can't wait. Nope, not for me. I haven't decided yet, or just leave a comment. Let me know if you're going to be investing in Woodcats International IPO. It's the first IPO of 2026. It's a junior market listing. Yes, I can't wait. No, it's not for me. I haven't decided yet, or leave a comment. And that poll is going to be up on our YouTube channel, also on X, and in tomorrow morning's newsletter. Or you can, of course, leave a comment in the chat. Now, up next, Before we move on to your market recap, we also have another discussion for you. Now, we played this segment, or we attempted to play this segment last week when Andrew was here filling in for me, but we had some technical difficulties and it didn't really come across so well. So we want to give it another go because it is a really important conversation that we're having about cybersecurity. In the AI and digital age, we need to learn how to protect our assets because AI has changed the game so much that even a single email could wipe out 10 years of profit. Can you imagine? And as investors, that is the last thing that we want. I recently sat down with the co-host of the upcoming Global South Cybersecurity Summit, Douglas Davidson, and also Director of Cybersecurity at Simtai Consulting, Rory Ebanks, to discuss how we protect our regional assets. Here's that interview. Hi, Rory. Hi, Douglas. Welcome to Taking Stock.
Hi, Kalila. Thank you for having me here.
Great.
Hi, Kalila. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you. Cybersecurity is one of those topics that people don't really think about, or I should say most people don't really think about until it's too late, because you guys think about it all the time. But Rory, I want to start with you by looking at the hard numbers. When a Caribbean financial firm gets hit by ransomware today, is it just a bad week for the IT department, or are we talking about losses that actually impact the share price and dividends?
So it's actually more significant than just a bad week for the IT department, because when you get hit by a ransomware or any cyber incident, it may actually take months, even up to years, to fully recover. So let's think about it from different angles now. So yes, the share price can be impacted, dividend payments can be impacted, because you're going to start thinking about loss of availability of the systems. If your systems are down and you can't do any transactions, customers can't purchase items, that will result in a loss of revenue. If the company is losing revenue, then of course the financials will be impacted negatively. Even thinking about like a reputational damage, have you ever witnessed cases where you hear an organization was affected by a cyber incident, you see that the systems are down, you hear that your personal information has been leaked? Would you continue to do business with them, or would you be skeptical? We have seen instances like that right here in Jamaica, where organizations have been impacted by a cybersecurity attack. Information has been leaked. Examples of those information has been leaked, and this is across different organizations, different industries. So we see it in the financial industry, we see it government, in the health industry was the most recent one in 2025 that would have had a significant impact, where sensitive health information was leaked. If you start looking at it from the numbers perspective now, a average data breach can result into about $2 million US. That's the average impact within the Caribbean. The global impact is actually higher. It's closer to $5 million US. So in 2025, it was $4.8 million US, and year on year, it keeps increasing. So imagine your organization hit by a cyber incident, and you're now going to be responsible for spending $2 million US. A lot of organizations don't even generate $2 million US. And then to add on top of that, what if you get fined by the Jamaica Data Protection Act? Because the Jamaica Data Protection Act, if you are negligent in a cybersecurity breach or incident, you can be fined up to 4% of your gross annual turnover. So all of that is hitting the financials, right? And if you're a director, you can also be fined $5 million or 10 years imprisonment. So those are just some of the financial implications. When you start thinking about recovery also, you have to spend to start recovering, restoring, and hardening the infrastructure. I always recommend being proactive, because when you're proactive, you can spend a fraction of what you're going to spend in terms of being reactive to try and restore the system. So proactive looks like us coming in, doing an assessment of your environment, doing an assessment of your network, finding the vulnerabilities and working with you to harden and to fix those. So just in case an attack happens, you should be able to withstand those attacks, or In the worst case, if a breach occurs, you should have processes in place to restore and recover as fast as possible without having that negative impact on your finance and operations.
Yeah, that's very, very substantial. Now, one of your speakers at the GSCDP Summit is going to be Jason Lau from Crypto.com. And he's warned that 2026 is actually a tipping point. The experts are saying that hackers are now using AI to drain accounts faster than humans can even react. Is that just hype, or is that the new reality? Because if AI can fake a CEO's voice and likeness or automate an attack, does that make our old firewalls just completely useless?
So I wouldn't say it's completely useless, but we are now on the perimeter of being attacked anytime, anywhere. And with this sophistication in terms of using AI, you'll hear about deep fake attacks, leveraging AI to craft phishing emails. So for example, before, let's say 5 years ago, if an email comes in that's called phishing, then you would look for misspelling, the grammatical errors, the verbs aren't correct. Leveraging AI, attackers can utilize the tools to craft emails. So for example, an attacker may put in their pretext, let's craft an email pretending to be Kalila. This is the name of the company. Utilize her tone, and it will craft the email accordingly because you have a public record. You have a lot of videos out there. You have a lot of articles. So it will gather all of that information and write the email as if it's coming from you. And then attackers are also leveraging AI to create the email, utilize the timeliness when it's going to be sent out. So is it that they're going to send it at 9 a.m. in the morning versus 12? They're going to look at all of those. And those are some of the things that we also do when we're utilizing social engineering techniques. So not just phishing email, but targeting the human element. The human firewall will always be one of the weakest links. So it doesn't matter how much you invest in technology. If you're not investing in the human element, meaning training the users, advising them about some of these attack vectors, some of these weaknesses, then they can simply just write down your password, click on a link, and your entire organization is now impacted.
So let's bring Douglas in, because Douglas, you sit at the intersection of fintech and strategy. Now, if Rory is saying that these attacks are happening faster than humanly possible, can a board of directors still claim we didn't know? Because if a bank goes offline for 3 days because they were cheap on security, is that a governance failure and not just a technical failure?
Kalila, thanks very much for having us. And you are spot on. You're spot on. That's exactly why we call this wealth preservation. And this includes having solid cybersecurity and data privacy best practices. So with these AI-driven cyber threats, with how fast they're evolving, boards can't plead ignorance. If you don't understand the risk, you are liable. It's simple as that.
No, looking at the summit, which is coming up in early February, and I'm going to be hosting it, you've built it specifically for what we call the Global South. Why do we need a specific approach for this region versus just buying the latest cybersecurity software?
Yes, indeed. We're really looking forward to you co-hosting the summit, Kalila, along with myself. Dr. Mawador is an expert in cyber simulations and live simulations in these AI-driven cyber attacks. We can't just import a generic fix. We need to train our own people to lock down our data and fight these AI-driven threats head-on and in real time. So that's why we brought the experts here from the Global South and the North, so that we do not become easy targets for these global attacks.
Makes sense.
I'd like to add on to that too, because one of the things that you have to take into consideration is that the Caribbean is unique in terms of how it operates. So based on our experience and our threat intel team, some of the attacks that you see occurring in different industries and around the world does not necessarily target our region. Or if it's going to target our region, it may be a few months down the line. So for example, certain technology organizations don't utilize in our region. So if an attacker is utilizing that vulnerability or that exploit to gain access to a system, if we're not utilizing it, then we would not be impacted. However, the flip side is that we are also lacking in terms of updating and upgrading some of our systems or our infrastructure. So hackers may target older vulnerabilities and exploit those to gain access to the systems. So we're pretty unique in terms of some of the vulnerabilities that we identify. So for example, weak passwords are still being identified on networks, default credentials. That's really a culture mindset, and it's very important for us to understand that we have to focus on training individuals. So yes, you can think about all of the tools and technology, but we also have to educate everyone within the region about these vulnerabilities and threats. So AI is going to be used to emulate these attack vectors, but you still have to start from the basics before you even jump to AI, because then you may start to think about post-quantum computing and cryptography, all of these advanced items. But if we start from the basic and utilize our cybersecurity roadmap, then along the way you will harden and get more robust in terms of thinking about cyber threats.
And Douglas, just as we wrap, the CEO or a CEO might be watching this and thinking, sounds good, but we can't afford to send the team right now. What is the cost of not being in the room on February 2?
Well, Kalila, the cost is relevancy. If your competitors are using AI to secure their organizations and you're relying on outdated strategies, you are simply open to real financial and reputational risk. So we look forward to welcoming executive and management teams. It promises to be an excellent summit that will drive real and long-term value for these organizations in the Global South.
All right. Well, we look forward to hearing more at the conference coming up on February 2. Thank you, Rory. Thanks, Douglas.
All right. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Kalila. Thanks, Rory.
So that event is next week, February 2 to 5, and you really do need to be in the room. Cybersecurity is not just for the techies. When you think about even a company like mine, a small company, how we've been affected by these issues. I've been locked out of my Instagram account. I've had my Facebook account hacked, and people run up money on my Facebook ads account. When you think about all the impersonators on TikTok, these can cause irreparable damage to one's reputation, because the scammers are there. They're impersonating me, and then they use my name to scam other people. When you think about the deep fakes that are being done using personalities like me, our likeness, our voices, I said Andrew Holness, they have done so many people, Adam Stewart. These are serious threats. And I think an event like this is something that every business owner truly needs to attend. So it comes up next week, February 2 to 5. So the second is what? Monday. So it starts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days, almost all of next week. It is in the morning. It starts, I think, at 8 o'clock and it goes until about midday. And you can register at GSPEN.net. GSPEN.net. And you can use the code WealthSecure for a 10% discount for our Taking Stock viewers. You can get that discount on the corporate group package. Use the code WealthSecure at GSPEN.com. The link is in the description. Up next, we've got your market recap, and our special analyst, Randy Rowe, is standing by. Market Recap is brought to you by My Money JA, the official data partner of Money Media. The JSE Combined Index gained 5,700 points last week. That's about 2%. 127 stocks traded across the main and junior markets for the week ending Friday, January 23, 2026. 60 made gains, 52 lost value, and 15 stayed the same. 136 million shares changed hands on the Jamaican dollar market, valued at $605 million. TransJam was the week's most traded stock, with 47 million shares changing hands. It opens the new week at $5.89. Kintyre traded the second highest volume, starting Monday at 51 cents. And Edufocal rounded out last week's most traded stocks. It started the week at 30 cents. Now let's see who had the biggest gains. WIP Terminal was the top stock last week. It opened Monday up 33.5%. Medical disposables and supplies gained 30% to start the new week at $1.43. And A.S. Bryden & Sons USD shares started Monday at 27 cents US, up 26%. On the losing side now, Sagicor Real Estate X Fund was the week's biggest loser, down 24%. It started the week at $5.81. Margaritaville Turks USD lost 22% to start Monday at 7 cents US, and First Rock Real Estate Investments USD lost almost 17%. Over on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, the composite index gained 7 points last week. That's almost 1%. NCBFG was the TTSE's most traded stock. It opened Monday down 0.5% at $1.92 TT. Trinidad and Tobago NGL was the TTSE's top gainer, up 71%, while Guardian Media fell 9% to open Monday at 62 cents TT. Over in the U.S., the Dow Jones and S&P 500 were down about 1% last week, while the Nasdaq lost 0.5%. At the pumps, the cost of 87 gas was up 47 cents last week, while 90 went up 45 cents. Meanwhile, diesel prices rose $2. In foreign exchange trading, it took an average $157.41 Jamaican to purchase $1 US last Friday. That's 89 cents less than the week before. $1 Canadian cost on average $116.48 Jamaican. $1 British pound cost $212.14 Jamaican, and you could buy €1 for $186.22 Jamaican on average. Finally, on the crypto markets, Bitcoin prices fell 2% over the last 5 days, trading at $87,367 on Monday. Ethereum prices were down 3%, trading at $2,892 on Monday. Market Recap was brought to you by My Money JA, the official data partner of Money Media. Subscribe to my newsletter for money news like this straight to your inbox. Go to getmoneynews.com to sign up. The link is in my bio. Let's get this money. The views expressed in this segment are not necessarily the views of Money Media. This information is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. Please consult a licensed financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Welcome back. Before I introduce Randy, reminder of tonight's poll question. Will you be investing in the Woodcats International IPO? And your options are, yes, I can't wait. No, it's not for me. I haven't decided yet. Or other, leave a comment. And I see a few comments here. Camisa Gordon says A all the way. So that's a yes. Ryan says, I'm selling some TAH to buy IPO. Unbothered says, no, not for me. IPOs are not that interesting anymore. So a range of opinions on this one so far. I also see Oren, who is, of course, TJH Army, saying TJH traded as high as $7 today before closing at $6.58. I feel good. And Ashton says, LGTM, let's get this money. All right, so it's been a minute since we've had Randy Rowe on the show. As you know, Randy is founder of mymoneyja.com. And so I thought that it was highly appropriate that we have him on to give his kind of overview of 2025 and what he's looking forward to for 2026. Welcome back, Randy.
Hi, Kalila. How are you? Nice to be back.
I am good. Since we last spoke, you have had a lot of things happen, both personally and professionally. So congratulations on everything.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah, it's been a while. I say Happy New Year also, and hi to the viewers.
It really has been a while. So mymoneyja.com. How's it been going, by the way?
It's good. It's good. It's good. It's wonderful to see more of the dream being built out. It's the sort of thing that I say, Jamaicans from even when I was young, I've always wanted to have this site that you can go on or this app you can use to keep track of the stock market. And, you see all the stuff overseas, you see Robinhood and so on. And, you wish for it to happen. And I'm happy to see it happen. Finally, I'm happy to do my part to help build it out. And yeah, it's been going good. We now have thousands and thousands of users.
The platform definitely has a lot of fans here on Taking Stock. Every week I see some people in the comments saying they don't invest at all without My Money GA. So big up yourself for that. So you are, I guess now I can call you the data boss because you have all the data at your fingertips through mymoneyja.com. Let's look at what we would say, or what would you say are the winners and losers of 2025, informed, of course, by the data.
Of course, and I'll show you using My Money JA. There we go. So I was actually looking on today as I was listening to you talk about the things. I noticed you have a lot of TGH lovers in the chat. So yeah, it caught my attention also with how much you traded today. But as you said, looking on 2025, things have been. It's been a wonderful year, actually. Looking back, it's been a wonderful year. So the number one stock, I don't know if you covered it many times before. I know it hasn't been around for that long, but whipped, we call it whipped, but you call it West Indies Petroleum, or you call it whip terminal. I heard you call it a while ago.
We usually just say whip without the T, but yeah.
Well, I put the T on because they put the T on, and I suspect it's because they have other plans around the name without the T. But yeah, WIP was the number one stock of the year, and it's I don't know, a bit of a surprise because it listed in the last week of the year, really, West Indies Petroleum, and within the space of just that time, I think it listed on the 23rd of December, and between the 23rd of December to the end of the year, it jumped from 50 cents per share all the way up to $1.31 per share, making it the number one stock on the market across all our markets for the year at 162% growth.
And since then, it's jumped even more than that.
It continues to jump. Yeah, again, that was December 31st, 131. It ended today at, I believe, over $11.
Wow. So what do you think is
$11.40?
What do you think has been driving that dramatic increase? Why are investors rating WIPs so highly?
Well, I think there's multiple reasons. Obviously, you can never really tell unless you know every single person who is trading it, reason for buying and selling. However, I believe that what we're seeing with it is it started out with twofold. One, it's just interest. It's a new IPO. There's always so much interest around that. And then it just wasn't very available. It's as even I just said, it's a new IPO. It wasn't really an IPO. It was a listing by introduction. So got introduced to the market, but only employees and early stakeholders would have owned any shares. And so we saw from the very start of it, we saw a huge amount of interest from the investing public trying to get it. So demand just drove it heavily, and it just wasn't available. So the second it became available, you immediately had people willing to pay huge amounts in order to access it. If I remember correctly, I think the very first day that it became widely available was not that long. It was I want to say in January, actually. So there were just a few small trades between the date got listed by introduction and the end of the year. In fact, if I remember correctly, about 16,000 units is all that traded between its listing date and the end of the year. But in that time, it added, I think, I don't have the exact number, but I'll tell you, it added a few billion in terms of market cap using just 16,000 shares. So it has been a roller coaster, to say the least. And of course, people see that and then they're excited, and that excitement shows itself in people being willing to pay more and more and more. But most of that growth in terms of the investing public happened during 2026. So the early.
But now it's dramatically overvalued, Randy. Do you think we're going to see a correction anytime soon?
Is it dramatically overvalued?
What's the PE? I know you can find it quickly there on My Money JA.
So according to MFJA, which is correct, the PE is at this point 354.7 times, and it was higher.
I would call that dramatically overvalued.
I would call it that. No, I don't tend to value companies solely on the PE, but I think by any measure, this is what you're seeing here is heavy interest and low supply. So the low supply has caused it to be, I mean, a gold mine in the eyes of those who can get it. However, why you hear me hesitate to say it's overvalued is that I don't think that we have seen the full layout of what this company is yet fully. I think maybe the owners, the parent company, probably have a couple of things up their sleeve. And so who knows, the PE can change. They might be able to throw out, I don't know, some massive profit. But I wouldn't argue with anybody who said it's overvalued. And as I said, it has been even more overvalued in the past few days. It's wild. But then when they put out the latest set of results that they did, that brought the PE, it brought it into maybe a little bit more sensible. Well, there's nowhere near sensible territory. But yeah, it is yet to be seen. Or as the analysts often say, one to watch, right?
All right. So what else was another winner of 2025?
So if it wasn't for Whipped, we would have had Kintyre being the number one stock on the market, and that also had a bit of a last minute rise happening pretty much from the start of December to the end of December. I mean, it started December at roughly, I want to 50 cents per share. And this is a story completely of just the I wouldn't say resilience, but I said 50 cents. Sorry, it started at 27 cents. So at the start of December. So by the end of the year, December 31st, it being at 76 cents is a massive, massive, massive jump for it. And it would have been the number one stock if Whipped hadn't come along and whipped it, if you will. But both of them being similar in that the real movement in them didn't happen throughout the year, right? The real movement happened right at the end of the year there. So I don't know what the late interest is. This doesn't have the same factors as Whipped, of course. This is very, very, very available. But we have seen a whole lot of posting and public pronouncements from the company and the company leadership, including around real estate moves that they've made and partnerships and some acquisitions that they've made. And
I think they invested in a rum company. Was it a rum company? I saw, yeah.
Something about a rum company, and then I believe there is some partnership with the Miracle brand, something that they call, which I will admit is that I have not to do with it. I'll tell you, it's a terrible name, Bold Brands, which means something, but the D stands for dividends, which I think is what they want to stand out. So Bold Brands, and the Bold Brands is the biggest thing that they have said, but we haven't seen any numbers around it. Nonetheless, for the month of December, it was enough to make it the second highest gainer on the market. And not to make it sound like it's undue praise to them, they did also have a bit of a turnaround year. Kintyre, formerly iCreate, as you know, they are coming from very, very far. So for them to have reported profit for the last 3 quarters that they have reported it is by no small measure a big deal for them. In fact, I think they have some of the highest profit on the junior market. Granted, as again, the analysts will tell you, not all profit is the same. So, there's a profit from selling goods, collecting cash, and having profit there versus profit along the lines of revaluing land, which I believe was involved in this, revaluing some of the acquisitions that you have. But at the end of the day, it all goes to the same place. So profit is in some regards profit. But this profit has been driven heavily by their acquisitions and I believe the revaluation of some of their lands. But
That is a big turnaround. That's a huge turnaround for Kintyre, formerly known as iCreate, indeed. Do you think, though, Randy, that they're kind of over-diversified at this point? Are they spreading themselves thin, going from real estate to digital advertising? Now they're in rum and beverages and all kind of different things.
I would say I don't know. I don't know if they're too thin because, to their credit, the CEO or / chairman, I'm not sure what Tyrone's full title is, but the company leadership has spoken about switching deliberately to being an investment holding company, right? So they are looking for lots of diversified industries, it would seem, and that is their product. Now, you can say that, and it's a nice thing to do, but that requires a few things. It requires, one, the knowledge of how to tie all those things together. Everybody wants to be Warren Buffett, but even Warren Buffett wasn't Warren Buffett until after a couple of decades, right? It requires understanding all those businesses, managing all those pieces. It helps if you're in like a specific business line, and then you do acquisitions along that business line, like you mentioned earlier with DTL and the upcoming IPO, where they bought that pallet company because DTL uses a lot of pallets. Kintyre seems to be grabbing as they can get it, but that's not to say that it can't work. If you can make it work, it can work. Is the company spreading too thin? That's yet to be seen, but honestly, anything that gets them some profits these days is good. So we'll find out where it's too thin and where it isn't in a couple of quarters, especially as the full year report gets done for Kintyre for this year, which we are still waiting on.
Let's look at some of the poor performers for 2025. What was the worst performing?
All right, so let me just flip my list around here. So the worst performing, I believe, was Jamaica Broilers in terms of share price.
Not surprising.
Maybe not surprising, coming out of the news of them having, I'm not sure the figure is now, but the last thing I remember is about 40 billion in Kalila, you probably have a better term for it. The terms I have might not be better for it, but 40 billion in terms of company business being not so above board, it would appear. So there seems that the company got hit, especially the US side of the company got hit.
They use the term fraud themselves, so we can use it.
That's great. I can't afford that lawsuit, so we'll say. So if they have said fraud, it seems clear to be fraud, and not just fraud in a single year, but multi-year discrepancies. So fraud going back years, fraud going back for years when they previously reported profits, and then having to wipe it off the books. And so yeah, it's not surprising to see the sort of investor reaction to that, and not just retail investor reaction. Obviously, people like you and I, Kalila, might be very concerned about some more money, but when the bigger players in the market move, you'll also see it, right? And I do know that on the day that the fraud was reported, we had a big drop. And then when we had a long gap between them reporting their numbers and officially giving us the last audited numbers and the reworked numbers, on the day when the reworked numbers came out, there was also a massive drop, and it has continued to fall since then. So you're right, no surprise there for the biggest loser being Jamaica Broilers.
I hope we can bring up the clip, but I asked, so as we talk about Jamaica Broilers, there was some controversy recently when NCB announced that they are going to be basically bailing out Jamaica Broilers with a huge loan designed to help them recover, of course. And there were a lot of people who were saying that NCB, given the controversy surrounding them, everything going on with leaching, should they be bailing out Jamaica Broilers at this point? And I saw Angus Young at the JSE conference last week, explaining that basically broilers is too big to let them fail and too important to Jamaica's food security. Is this a move that you think NCB should have made? Because some people are saying maybe they should have left that to like a development bank like a Exim or a DBJ to do.
I don't think there's any bank in Jamaica that has developed Jamaica more than NCB. Maybe the Bank of Jamaica, right? But in terms of commercial banks, I don't think there's any more. If you look into this stuff a little deeper, NCB also already is in business, has been in business with JBG for the last few years. They are partners. And so I'm not surprised actually that NCB is doing this, because while it is good for JBG, yes, while it is good for the nation, there's no question, it's also good in some regards for NCB, because it allows them to be stronger. It allows them, maybe some would say, I'm not clear on how all of that money is being used. I think a lot of it is maybe being used for near-term things, but I believe NCB has an agreement with them where a lot of their near-term expenses were kind of handled via NCB, and then there's some payback there. So NCB, in helping them, is very much helping themselves. So I disagree with anybody who might think that NCB shouldn't step in. It is the sort of thing that NCB should step into to help. And there are not many entities at the size that can do that. So I'm happy that they're doing it. And I'm still looking forward to see what the final will be on JBG, because there's so much that's still unsaid and unasked when it comes to JBG.
All right, so who was next? So Broilers was the worst performing, and second worst went to who?
ISP Finance Services. So ISP is, I describe them as maybe a small dollar, right? But they're not really a small dollar in terms of the books. In fact, in some regards, it could be seen as being near to dollar. But they're a small loans company. They fell 51.19% for the year. So ISP fell not much, I would say, about them in terms of their activities, their commercial activities. That isn't already very good. They're a strong company, they're a quiet company. They have a nice pipeline of loans that they work with. They're pretty consistent in terms of their profits. There's a small fall off this year compared to the previous years in terms of the profit. But I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that the largest part of their fall off has been just investors being frustrated with them. It was maybe late 2024, mid 2024, or during 2025, that the company leadership came out and said that they're considering raising money in the future. They haven't been clear on what they're going to do yet, but they said they want to raise, and I'm paraphrasing here, if they do raise, they would prefer to do an APO. The retail investing public has been burned by APOs again and again. So I believe that a large part of the share price fall off has been just literally response to that. People being afraid of, being locked into something that does the wrong kind of raise, and your money might be lost for years. Nobody don't want their money burn up, right? So I think that's what it is, but it could be anything else. I'm not sure.
Where does NCB fall
in terms of the numbers for
right
the year?
Well, how did it perform for the year 2025?
So NCB Financial Group was the 22nd worst loser in terms of share price. So the share price fell 23.5% from the start of the year to the end of the year, right? Ending the year at $38.87, $38.87. But I don't know, that might be a bit deceptive, because as you remember, Kalila, earlier in the year, it was much lower. There are times during the year where it was much, 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 much lower. In fact, I think it fell as low as 20 at one point, or just low 20s, and coming back up.
It was in the 20s, yeah.
Yeah, so coming back up now to the level it is, where it's 38. It's still low. I'm sure anybody who bought it over 100 or closer to 200 is still feeling the pain. However, it is better. And like I said, it's deceptive, because oftentimes you'll see the end of year number and it might seem like, it's terrible. But if you bought it at $20, that's almost 100% profit. In fact, I know people who make more than 100% profit during the year from NCB. And NCB is also interesting in that it's also a great example of the difference between the share price and the company, which is something that a lot of people should pay more attention to. The share price is not the company, right? The
And
company
also,
is,
I feel like a lot of people have confused Leachin's issues with NCB having an issue, and they're not the same thing.
they're not the same thing. They might be related, but they're certainly not the same thing. NCB itself is at its, I don't know if I'd say it's at its strongest, but it is very close. So I often have the same thing. People ask me all the time about NCB. We do our podcast every week on Twitter and on YouTube, and people ask all the time, what do you think happening with NCB? And sometimes they're very surprised when I tell them that NCB is probably at its strongest. No, it last year, it reported its fourth biggest profit ever in its entire history. That was last year. It's its highest revenue ever. So it's bringing in the most money that it has. It's on a 3-year turn of reduced expenses, and like I said, fourth highest profitability ever in its history in terms of net profit to shareholders. But the share price is not the company. So the company might be strong, but the share price is not so strong. And for the shrewd investors who knows to time or to wait until those two things align, they'll look out maybe. But yeah, you're right. There might be a lot of conflating of people imagining that what they believe is Michael Leachin's issues are also the bank's issues, when in reality, it would appear at least that as a result of maybe any personal issues, it has resulted in the man and his team strengthening the jewel in his crown, right? If it's still his crown. If it's still his jewel, I should say. It's definitely his crown.
Interesting comment there right at the end, if it's still, because we don't know where he got the money. We know he made the payment Friday.
Correct.
Where did it come from? So finally, Randy, with all this data at your fingertips from mymoneyje.com, I'm sure you have some perspectives on, or at least some idea of what you're looking at for 2026. So what stocks have caught your attention for this year?
Well, I mean, this is usually people tell you I'm not an advisor. I'm definitely not an advisor. But I feel good about the year so far. The start of the year till now, I mean, me and the investors around me, I know I've been making some serious gains. I like the fact that we have an IPO out now, and it's an IPO that some people seem to be very excited about. I am excited about the market overall. Right, I'm excited about the market overall. And because of that, I'm excited about the JSE. Sometimes we forget that the JSE is listed, and the JSE being listed means that all the things that you expect to happen on the market, good, bad, or ugly, once it happens, the JSE gets money. If the share price goes up, the JSE gets money when people sell. The share price goes down, the JSE gets money when people sell. And when new IPOs happen, the JSE gets money there. So I'm happy about the JSE as usual. I am bullish on the rebuilding efforts. I knew a couple of weeks ago you were talking to analysts who spoke about Carib Cement. Obviously, that's a massive one. Atlantic Hardware is a massive one also, I believe. Atlantic Hardware distributes to all the hardware, well, not to all the hardwares, but to a large swathe of the hardwares across the entire island. Right. So they're more of a hardware distributor.
Right after Hurricane Melissa, they shot right up.
Yeah, and they continue to go up, actually, believe it or not. There, I mean, $2.15 now, they're close today at $2.15, and that's one of the highest it's been. And it is maybe like a sneak IPO. It IPO'd early last year, in about March last year, and nobody seemed to really be paying much attention to it. It actually fell below the IPO price. A lot of us, myself included, bought below the IPO price. And then around the time, a little after Melissa, as he said, it shot right back up. So some good profit was made there. And I think this is the start of something massive. I'm also very bullish on the economy that I heard you mentioning earlier. I saw the clips from the Prime Minister and the Minister speaking. And because of that, I know what that means. Economic growth means productivity should be rising, but it also means consumption will continue to happen and happen higher. A lot of the consumption hopefully will come from local, but we know inevitably a lot of the things that people consume are going to come from overseas, which means that the ports are going to have a lot of business. And so if you tie all of those things that I've said together, economic activity, the ports having a lot of the imported goods coming through, meaning the shipping ports, the rebuild post Melissa, I find that a lot of them are around CHL, cargo handlers. And the cement, I call CHL the second cement company in Jamaica. A lot of people, everybody knows about Carib Cement, but CHL is the second cement company. They're the quiet company that owns another company that has the rights from the government to import cement. And that's a very hard thing to get. I believe they're the only one that has it really. Occasionally there might be a thing where the government allows like somebody to bring in something for a project, but outside of that, CHL handles cement. They're bringing cement from the dam rep, and everybody knows Carib Cement. I think they're finding out about CHL, which outside of that, they have the port in Montego Bay as their base of operations and part of what they do. And I know I'm not the only person looking at it, because one of the things that happened last year was that Kingston Wharves, the port in Kingston, bought a huge chunk of CHL. They actually acquired a large chunk of CHL, and they also have the option to acquire a whole lot more. I think up to 40% of CHL is what they can buy. So I suspect that we haven't heard the last of the whole CHL run, especially because a lot of the parties behind the purchase of CHL are also the parties behind the listing of Atlantic Hardware. And so if a hardware distributor has a lot of island-wide customers, and the same people who own and control it also buy a port in Montego Bay that imports cheap cement, hopefully by the end of this year, you'll be able to look back and go, oh, it was obvious then, right? So those are two of the things that I'm very, very bullish on.
So logistics and construction.
Logistics and construction with a direct link to the retail investor, so you can see where your money is going.
I would throw Phosrich in there too.
I like that idea of Phosrich and the solar. I'd be interested in knowing how they're thinking about handling the competition, because everybody's in solar. Believe it or not, one of the more exciting solar companies to me for 2026 is actually JetCon. So everybody knows JetCon for the cars. They used to be in used vehicles. They moved into a lot of the Chinese vehicles, and I believe maybe electric vehicles, but they also have a solar side. And as they have been building out their solar side, it has been going very, very well for them. They're also a bit of a turnaround story. They had loss after loss for the last few years, but so far, as they've reported to us, they've had massive profits for the last 3 quarters for last year. So I'm looking forward to hearing how they wrap the numbers up for the year and how their solar division has done. But they themselves have said that one of the drivers of the growth has been solar, and I believe they said that they're excited. They didn't say excited, but there is increased business coming out of Melissa also, as more Jamaicans see the need to have a solar backup to their homes and businesses.
Let me take some of the comments and questions from the audience. Omar saying, appreciate your app and Moments with Stace. I love My Money JA platform. Great job, Randy. Thank you. Oren says, I tried getting WIP when it just came out without success, but I'm no longer interested at this time. Every week, Oren was in the chat saying, trying to get WIP, I couldn't get it. Sean says, WIP is fueled by speculation, which is just gambling. Vice-Matic says they're overvalued. Ryan says, I see talk of WIP buying Petrojam. What do you think, Randy?
I haven't seen that talk. That's big talk.
I haven't seen it either.
Yeah, to buy a refinery from the government is a massive thing if they pull that off.
Well, we can ask them next week. So we're supposed to have them on next week. They were supposed to be on tonight, and at the last minute, they couldn't make it anymore. But next week, they've committed to, so hopefully we can get them next week, because we had them on pre-listing, and a lot of things have changed since then, because now they've listed, the stock price has soared. They didn't list the full company, many things to ask them. So you guys can ask them next week.
And you can ask them about that point on the refinery, because I believe maybe before they listed, they may have tried to buy a refinery. I think it's a Peachtree refinery I want to say SVI in VI or somewhere like that, but they'll be able to tell you better than that. So who knows? Maybe there's something there.
Barrington says, mad at UKR. How comes you never tell us about the WIP IPO? A, it wasn't an IPO. B, I did tell you they were coming. We did a whole interview with them pre-listing. So you missed it, probably because you're not on the newsletter, getmoneynews.com. And C, they're going to be on hopefully next week, so you can hear some more from them. Roswell says, on Kintyre, I was buying up enough. I made good on profit. Looked like he had much business lines very far. Companies coming from very far. It's a growth company. Let's see for Edufocal. Kurt Gibson says, I like Kintyre, but it's not a stock to hug up unless you fully convicted. Roswell again. No, not this one. Next one. Kintyre is a growth company. Just imagine if and when the company takes on dividends. I'm looking at possibly $2 per share, so don't underestimate. I see people, watch me translating, I see people bullish on good news. And then Lanesra says, I just hope we don't get no major hurricane this year. Jesus Christ. Wow.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's no major hurricane.
The words of Mavado, hope and pray. Because we can't manage. We really can't manage.
But thankfully, if it does happen, we at least have the market to help us get through it. And that's a big deal. Like the Trans-Jamaica rise happening after the hurricane last year. I know personally people that it helped when they needed money the most. And I know people know also who it's helping. So hope it doesn't happen. But if it does, thankfully we have the market.
And as you mentioned, TJH, they finally started charging on that most recent leg of the highway. So we expect to see those results at the next quarterly release.
That might be why the share price is flying now.
Probably. Well, thank you so much, Randy. Appreciate your presence. We need to have you on more, at least once a quarter.
Yes, we do. And we should point out your code, Money Mission, so the people do like My Money JA. So they do have the option if you sign up mymoneyja.com/money mission. That's a specific code for Kalila. You get 10% off, and it helps Kalila out also. And every time one of you guys sign up, I have to pay her. So sign up, Money Mission, and you get that discount off. And even if you don't get a discount, sign up with it anyway, because you'll get to try out the site. You'll get to try out the site and the app. There's also a mobile app, so you'll get to try both of them out.
Perfect. Thanks, Randy. Much appreciated. We need some more Randy on the program. We're going to take our final break and come back with your comments. Guess what, guys? The Money Mission workbook is now on 7 Crave Marketplace for same-day delivery within Jamaica. Exciting news. All you have to do is go to moneymissionja.com and you can select your delivery option. For global delivery, select Purchase on Amazon. For local delivery, fulfilled the same day by 7 Crave Marketplace, click 7 Crave. Or you can go to any of the following Fontana Pharmacy locations to get your copy. We're at Montego Bay, Fairview. We're at Waterloo. We're at Barbican Center and Barbican Square, Mandeville location, as well as Ocho Rios. Let's get this workbook. You can order your copy of the book at moneymissionja.com and utilize Amazon if you are abroad, or you can get it delivered through 7 Crave Marketplace, and all the links are at moneymissionja.com. Especially for the new year, buy it for a friend. If you have somebody who you know is trying to change their financial future, trying to make a difference in their life for 2026, go to moneymissionja.com to order your copy or a friend's copy of the workbook. Let me take your final comments. So we have Roswell saying, Fosrich, glad you mentioned logistics at this time in the economy is important. Hardware also. Lanesra says, listing by introduction is the new thing. We have, who else? Kenton. Kenton says, I thought Carib Cement was the only cement company in Jamaica. Gospel says, hope whip drops. The thing is the supply, as Randy mentioned, it's hard to get. So even if it does drop, being able to get it. Oren's been trying for weeks. Levine says the amount of money Petrojam pays into the consolidated fund, the government wouldn't give that up so easily, more to lease it. Lanestra wants to know the cost of the platform, mymoneyja.com. Just go on it and find out. They have different tiers. So go to mymoneyja.com/moneymission and you can choose your tier, whichever one is most appropriate for you, whichever one meets your budget. Kirk says, sell Petrojam, LOL, PNP with a riot. Shane wants to know the link to get the 10% off, mymoneyja.com/moneymission. Or you just go to the regular website and enter the code MONEYMISSION as all one word. Jamaica 278 wants to know if Montego Bay bypass will be a part of Trans Jamaica. I don't remember. I kind of feel like Montego Bay bypass is going to be different. I don't remember if it's going to be tolled, but don't quote me on that. I don't remember. You can just ask ChatGPT and find out. Kirk says that's crazy. Asking about the Long Hill bypass. So yeah, that is our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pretty good show. A lot of things to reflect on coming out at JSE conference last week, and that discussion with Randy. Randy always brings a wealth of knowledge, and you guys make sure to check out his platform, mymoneyja.com. I will see you again next week. Make sure you guys subscribe to the newsletter at moneymediaja.com. You can also go to getmoneynews.com to subscribe to the newsletter and make sure that you don't miss anything that's coming up. Remember, tomorrow night, we are going to be having GSPEN on, talking about, that's not who we're having on tomorrow. Sorry, Woodcats International. Woodcats International IPO. They're going to be on tomorrow night to talk about their upcoming IPO, which opens, I believe, on February 2, which is next week. So for those of you who are interested in that IPO, tune in to this channel, 8 o'clock tomorrow, to learn all about the Woodcats IPO. And then next week, reminding you, there is that cybersecurity conference. It is a virtual conference, and cybersecurity is extremely important in today's day and age. If you are a business owner, business leader, and anyone in a decision-making capacity at your firm, make sure that you guys sign up for the cybersecurity conference next week. Go to GSPEN.net, and you can use the code WealthSecure for 10% off your corporate group package. Because trust me, all the issues that are emerging today, if even my small business can be feeling the consequences, imagine as that scales, the challenge also scales. And how do you stay ahead of it? Make sure that you're part of that conference next week, GSPEN.net. Use the code WealthSecure, and I will see you there and see you tomorrow night for that special feature, that IPO alert on Woodcats International. Until then, I'm Kalila saying have a great week, and of course, let's get this money.